Okay, I'm here with the Quad City Times Political Focus Group. We have one member absent tonight. Kaylin Higgins is absent, but part of the group and writes every week for us. But I want to get right into the issues tonight. So the first thing I want to do is ask you about the political divide in America. So give me a show of hands, who thinks America is politically divided now? Okay, looks like everybody's a yes on that one. And has anyone seen another period in their lifetimes this divisive? Tim?
Thank you, Tom. Like Matt, I was alive during the Vietnam War. I was in high school. I got my draft number, 331. Knew I wasn't going to get drafted, but I was up in Iowa City when Kent State happened, and we picked up a friend of mine who was living in Slater Hall near Kinnick Stadium. And when we got there, the protests that had happened the day before, there was still smoke and smog and tear gas lingering in the quad Pentecrest across from the commercial area in Iowa City. It looked like a war zone. 6,000 students had protested, poured into the downtown area. They canceled college. There were helicopters flying around. I don't think that had happened on a campus or in most cities prior to Vietnam. And I remember very, very distinctly there being a divide of those long-haired hippies need to go to Vietnam and die, and the folks that were on the other side going, we need to get out of the war. Until this time, I don't think I've ever seen the country that bad.
Who else raised their hand? Jessica?
I remember in 2000 when it was the first time in my life I had to go to bed and I didn't know who the President of the United States was going to be. And I remember thinking, how can this be? This is so much uncertainty. And then I think about everything that's happened in the last 24 years since then. And I think with the onset of social media, it's been harder to bring people together because it's so easy to be anonymous and to just trash the other side. I've never heard anybody call George W. Bush Hitler. I never heard, people say, well, you didn't vote for Barack Obama, so you must be racist. I mean, I don't remember any of that happening before 2008.
All right, Jonathan.
I was going to say, I remember 2000, and I actually remember it a little bit differently, because I do remember the controversy. I remember the election being called repeatedly into question, really for the next 8 years. I remember Bush routinely being compared to Adolf Hitler. I remember it was really rather something of a scandal when there was a video short that was made that depicted someone shooting President Bush in the back, much like McKinley was shot. And like I said, that created quite a stir, but really there was a lot of argument back and forth as to whether that should have even been done, and a lot of people saying, well, it's free speech, it doesn't matter. But the tensions ran high, and I can't say that I've ever seen them not. I mean, there was a lot of, I do agree that there was a lot of back and forth, because then the election of President Obama was never in question. The rhetoric was every bit as strong in opposition to him.
So it's something that's existed before. Does anybody feel like now is the worst that it's been, at least in their lifetime? Jessica, you thought so?
I do, but
Yeah.
I can see why the 60s would
Yeah.
probably be the worst.
Paula, you think so?
I definitely think, it's progressively gotten worse in my lifetime. I don't feel like I felt like it was more divisive before now, but I was born in '83 and probably didn't know what a Democrat was till I was 18, so.
Okay, so let's move on to the next question. So what do you think the biggest contributor to this divided America is? And I imagine that there are many contributors, but who wants to put one forward? Eugene?
Gerrymandering. I perused the county clerk's records after the elections. It is so easy to know exactly how many people vote per precinct. You follow it over a couple of years, and when you have extreme gerrymandering, the politicians they have impunity. If you're in a left-wing district, Ocasio-Cortez or Nancy Pelosi, they can say the most outrageous things. Marjorie Taylor Greene or Lauren Boebert, they can say whatever they want, and they can't lose because their district is so heavily stacked. Then you get a swing district like we have here in the cities, whether it's Miller Meeks or whether it's Judge Joe versus Eric Sorensen. Eric Sorensen and Christina Bohannon are carrying Nancy Pelosi around their necks, and Judge Joe over there is trying to be a moderate guy. He's got Matt Gaetz hung around his neck. And so that causes a divide because there is no middle of the road guy, he can't run.
Yeah. So who else has something besides gerrymandering? Matthew?
I think the division seems to heat up whenever we kind of see that maybe not everyone's basic needs are stable and are being met. I think in terms of housing, in terms of quality jobs, quality education, quality healthcare, anytime those are all in the pot getting sort of called into question or they don't feel stable, I think that's when people feel like they really need to pick a side. They really need to either tear it all down or try to reinforce something that is farther left or further right than maybe the true solution is.
So it's reflective of the condition of America, people who don't have what they need, basic needs or security or...
I think we always do have a division, but that division sometimes heats up when people don't feel like their needs are being met.
Okay.
I think to a certain extent that America, we go through shifts where everything will be muddled, and then everything gradually shifts to people gradually shift to the polls as they find people who are more in line with their beliefs and what have you. And then a crisis occurs and it shifts everything around again, and everybody then has to basically sort out where they are. And so a lot of people will hold a mix of views from one side to the other, but over time we gradually polarize, and you'll see one group gradually come into alignment and all primarily agree on one thing, another group come in and primarily agree on one thing, and then we have another conflict. A mention was made earlier about the Vietnam War, which during the 60s and 70s was in many ways, perhaps along with the civil rights movement, those polarizing moments where everybody kind of came to the sides, and then once Vietnam ended, it reshuffled the deck, and then for about the last 40 years, we have been gradually moving from side to side.
I've got to get to Paula here.
I was gonna follow up on Matthew's comment about the division coming from people who have unstable conditions or times in their lives when they're just, they're less secure. That I feel like the media is really good at targeting people who need hope or have fear or have anxiety about certain situations, and a lot of people live in like a vacuum of being targeted by the media and hearing the things or seeing the things that it's all being kind of controlled by the media and your location, and I feel like that puts people in a vacuum and doesn't allow them to really see the bigger picture.
So do you feel like that's different over time? It's different now than it used to be?
It's a lot different just because, I mean, we were talking earlier about the ads that we see, and the
Yeah.
media wasn't even able to tell me, like, they were showing me New York ads back in the day, and it wasn't very long ago, probably 10 years ago, and
Yeah.
today, I mean, I see very targeted, select ads, and a lot of people stream, and a lot of companies, political parties, they know where people are, they know a lot more about people than they really tend to let on, and I think they target them.
Digital media allows them to get very
Tom, do
specific.
you think in this room, people can name all three anchors for the major news sources?
I doubt it.
Yeah, yeah, but you know, back when we were kids, or even young adults, Cronkite, Brokaw, Peter Jennings, they were the news. And you had no other choices except when Turner came along with CNN. It's what Paul's talking about. It all changes now, you pick your filter.
Yeah, who else?
It loses a lot of integrity with that too. Like, everybody's a newscaster. And everybody can lie, nobody has any integrity, you have no idea who to trust. And we all just listen to what we want to listen to.
Except for the Quad City Times, of course.
Except for the Washington
I don't believe
But you guys
anybody.
have to compete with likes for other places. You guys have to compete for that.
Yeah. And I will say, that filter, I hear the filter, I see the filter when people call in and say, why is this story here and why is that story there? And those weren't calls that I got 20 years ago.
There's pressure.
That's
Right. Right, they see it through a filter and they wonder why we don't have that same filter that they're used to, whether it's left or right, but David.
I wanted to make the point that ever since January 6th, there's this new element that I feel that has been pervasive throughout the news cycle, which is this concern on the peaceful transition of power. This concern on the democratic process of America, which, you know, I've seen in Latin America, you've seen in other countries, but you never thought you would see it here. Bringing to question, you know, will that transition happen? You mentioned earlier about going to sleep and not being sure, but that's still in the back of your mind, they'll figure it out. There was this sense that
I had
it's
trust.
America, the
I had
process will work, we'll figure it out. For the first time going into this election, you're hearing comments like existential and our democracy's under threat. Those are new comments and new concerns that never existed before, and I feel it really distorts those differences that we've always had. Because those differences were there, but you know, we'll survive, we'll be fine. But now you're seeing this sense of urgency and pressure.
Yeah,
In
John.
response to that, I was going to say, I don't necessarily agree. I grew up in Kansas, and I remember there being, for most of 96 to 2000, there was constant debate as to whether or not Bill Clinton was going to give up power. Once Bush was elected, there was constant debate, is he going to leave office? Obama, it happened again. It happens every single time. I do believe that it has gotten more heated. It's gone from basically a backroom discussion to now it is actually in the forefront of American thought. But I believe it's always been there.
Did you feel like you weren't sure the existing president was going to hand over power?
I've never had that as my particular fear. I've tended to believe that for the most part, as long as a president
Like
has
David
basic
said,
integrity,
It would work out.
it's going, we will eventually probably have a president that lacks any respect for the Constitution. There is a reason why Rome went from being a republic to an empire. Someone lost respect for the institutions. It will eventually happen here in the United States. But will it be any of the current crop? That I am not equipped to say, and I don't see it. I think
Right.
for the next few years we're okay.
Let me round it out here with this idea that maybe we're more disconnected than we have been in the past. We don't belong to to the clubs that we used to, bowling leagues, all of those things that used to be community. They've kind of fallen by the wayside. There's still some community, but it's been replaced by social media to a certain extent. Does anybody have any feelings about that? Any ideas about that?
I
Or-
don't feel disconnected from my community, and maybe that's because I volunteer and I do things with certain groups, so.
Okay,
I mean, if you want to spend all day in your house, and you can, you never have to leave your house, you can have DoorDash bring you food, you never have to see another human being, but I get out and I interact with people.
okay, Laura.
I was gonna say, I think for people like in my generation, like the technology and social media is just so like normal for us, and so like with the development of AI, like David talks about, like it really finds out like what you like, and they keep like sending you the same videos like on TikTok, like you see the same thing over and over, and you don't see anything different. And so like a lot of people have said it's so easy, especially people in my generation, to like stay on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, and see the same thing over and over, and they don't interact with different people who have like different opinions. And I think once you start to have like face-to-face conversations, like, this group is a good example of that. Like it humanizes the other side a lot better. But people don't do that. They stay like in their own bubble or like their own social media echo chamber.
Yeah, Paula.
I feel like we've gotten more disconnected just in my lifetime, and I can't imagine what it would be like to be a kid today. I feel like when I was younger, I had places I could go and I was allowed to be there. Like I didn't have to have a parent with me. I could go places. I mean, I had to obey laws and be moral and stuff. I mean, not all.
Tell me more about that.
But I feel like, and I mean, I live in a small town in Iowa, and I feel like kids aren't allowed to do anything anymore. Like there's always somebody complaining that they're out riding a bike or they're doing like, and I don't even know what they're supposed to do. And it all costs money. We've monetized everything. Like, I just don't understand what there is to offer anybody that's growing up, like elementary school or middle school or even high school. They're not allowed to have parties in cornfields anymore. Somebody's getting arrested and going to jail, even though nobody got hurt. I mean, I don't know.
You know what, I think we're gonna wrap up this segment here. Thanks, everybody.